Across Europe, like ghosts that have stepped out from the pages of history, lie the secret Nazi bunkers, silent yet eloquent witnesses to the immense military ambitions of Hitler's regime. Astonishingly, many of these colossal concrete fortresses remained hidden from the world for decades after the fall of the Third Reich, preserving their dark and dreadful secrets. These are masterfully camouflaged, sometimes perfectly preserved structures, some buried deep underground, others swallowed by forests, lost among the mountains, or even concealed beneath modern cities. Prepare to descend into a world of hidden mysteries and forgotten discoveries. Today, we uncover 15 recently found Nazi bunkers, and what was discovered inside will truly leave you speechless. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. On the northern coast of France, near the wind-swept shores of the English Channel, lies one of the most ambitious and daring creations of the Third Reich, Fortress Mimoyex. This massive underground complex, known by its codename Construction Site 711, was built to house Hitler's supergun project, the V3 London gun, a weapon designed to obliterate the British capital. The original plan called for 50 such cannons, capable of firing up to 3,000 shells a day on London. Later, the design was scaled down to 25 barrels, but even then, the system could unleash 600 shells per hour, a weapon of apocalyptic power. Construction began in September 1943. The site was chosen with precision. Located 8 kilometers inland, it was safe from naval bombardments. A nearby railway line ensured constant supply of materials, and the solid chalk bedrock provided a perfect foundation for deep excavation. The complex included 2 60-meter railway tunnels, dug 30 meters below the surface. Above them, at a 50-degree incline, stood 5 enormous shafts, each meant to hold the barrels of the giant guns. More than 5,000 workers, German engineers, skilled miners from the Ruhr, and Soviet prisoners of war toiled underground for 12 hours a day in inhuman conditions, reduced to the state of slaves. Allied intelligence at first misidentified the site, believing it to be a V-2 rocket base. Yet as reconnaissance intensified, its true purpose was uncovered, and Mimoyex became a top bombing target. From November 1943 to August 1944, the Allies dropped over 4,100 tons of bombs on the site. The decisive strike came on July 6, 1944, when the legendary 617th Squadron of the Royal Air Force, known as the Dam Busters, launched an assault using 16 tall boy seismic bombs, each weighing over 5 tons. The bombs penetrated deep into the earth before detonating, causing massive cave-ins and flooding much of the underground system. On September 5, 1944, Canadian forces captured the abandoned and shattered fortress without resistance. Then, in May 1945, acting on Winston Churchill's personal orders, the remaining structures were destroyed with 36 tons of explosives, as he viewed Mimoyex as one of the greatest potential threats ever conceived against Britain. Today, the partially preserved site of Mimoyex has been turned into a museum with memorials dedicated to the Allied airmen and the thousands of forced laborers who perished during its construction. Not far from the Normandy beaches, where the Allies once stormed the shores of occupied France, lay hidden one of Nazi Germany's most remarkable fortifications, the Mazy Battery. For over 60 years it remained buried beneath the soil, forgotten by history and swallowed by time, until a British historian and military enthusiast, Gary Stern, made a stunning discovery in 2004. It all began with a simple, almost accidental find, an old American uniform. In its pocket, Stern discovered a hand-drawn map, marked with the words High Resistance Area, near a small French town called Grandcamp.
Following the map's clues, he soon uncovered entrances obscured by thick vegetation and overgrown hedgerows. Determined to uncover the truth, Stern purchased a 44-hectare area from 27 separate landowners and began excavations in September 2005. What he unearthed stunned historians: a massive underground fortress that had completely vanished from official wartime records. Later excavations in 2008 revealed even more untouched bunkers, sealed since 1945. Inside lay German helmets, gas masks, ammunition, and traces of fierce firefights. LiDAR scans showed burn marks on the ceilings, evidence of close-quarter combat during the site's capture. The Mazy battery consisted of two primary positions: WN-83 Le Perruque, equipped with captured 155mm French howitzers, and WN-84 Lamartine, which housed four 105mm guns. In total, the complex held 14 heavy artillery pieces, including 150mm howitzers, capable of bombarding the Utah and Omaha landing beaches. It was, in essence, an underground city. Over 3 kilometers of interconnected trenches linked crew bunkers, command posts, radar and anti-aircraft stations, ammunition depots, field hospitals, and officers' quarters. Built into a gentle hillside below ground level, the battery was nearly invisible to Allied reconnaissance aircraft. Despite heavy pre-invasion bombings, the Mazy battery remained operational on D-Day and continued shelling Utah and Omaha beaches for 3 days after the landings began. Allied intelligence had focused on the more famous Pointe du Hoc battery, allowing the Mazy to remain largely unknown. Finally, on June 9, 1944, American Rangers launched their assault. After a 5-hour battle, which cost them 18 men, they overran the position. Inside, they discovered over 180 tons of ammunition, enough firepower to sustain a week of continuous bombardment.
The 13th. Hidden Nazi bunkers of Denmark. Along Denmark's rugged western coast lie some of the most remarkably preserved remnants of the Third Reich's Atlantic Wall. Between 1940 and 1945, the Nazis built over 7,000 concrete bunkers, making it the largest construction project in Danish history, equivalent to 300 to 400 billion kroner today. In 2008, powerful storms along Huvig Beach unearthed an extraordinary discovery: 4 fully furnished German bunkers, untouched since 1945. Local historian Tommy Casso was among the first to enter these time capsules after 2 9-year-old boys accidentally stumbled upon the entrances. Inside, archaeologists found an astonishing collection of personal relics: smoking pipes, unfinished bottles of schnapps, German uniforms, Hitler-era stamps, medical supplies, and radio equipment. Danish bunker expert Bent Antonissen called the find unique in Europe, while one archaeologist compared the experience to entering a pyramid filled with mummies. The artifacts were swiftly moved to the Olgat Museum for preservation after locals attempted to break in and loot the site. Denmark has since transformed many of its wartime bunkers into museums. The Tirpitz bunker in Blavand, once part of the Atlantic Wall, reopened in 2017 as a world-class museum, drawing over 100,000 visitors annually. The Fort Bangsbo battery in Frederikshavn still displays its original 150mm naval guns, and the Bunker Museum in Hirtshals offers visitors a chance to walk through 3.5 kilometers of trenches connecting 54 excavated bunkers. Public reaction in Denmark has been deeply divided. Some, like Ulia Becker, whose grandfather fought in the resistance, called the find our own Tutankhamun's tomb, a monument to historical truth. Others demanded their destruction, arguing they symbolized occupation and trauma. Yet, as one Danish newspaper editorial declared, they are part of our shared European history. Today, these haunting concrete relics, once symbols of war, stand as silent witnesses to the past, attracting historians, tourists, and those seeking to understand the fragile line between memory and forgetting. The 12th. The Wolf's Lair, Poland. Hidden deep within the dense Masurian forests of northeastern Poland lies one of the most infamous and secretive military headquarters of the Third Reich, the Wolf's Lair, Wolfschanze. This sprawling fortress served as Adolf Hitler's command center on the Eastern Front and became a nerve hub for some of the most crucial military decisions of World War II.
Located near the town of Kentrin, the complex covered over 250 hectares of heavily forested terrain, chosen for its isolation and natural camouflage. Construction began in 1940, resulting in more than 200 reinforced buildings, including bunkers, barracks, power stations, and communication hubs. Hitler spent over 800 days here, personally directing campaigns against the Soviet Union. The bunker's concrete walls were up to 8 meters thick, built to withstand relentless Allied air raids. Yet it wasn't enemy aircraft that nearly changed history here, but an explosion from within. On July 20, 1944, Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg carried out one of the most daring assassination attempts of the war. He placed a briefcase filled with explosives beneath the table during a military conference. The bomb detonated, killing 4 officers, but Hitler survived with only minor injuries. Shielded by the thick wooden leg of the conference table to which the briefcase had been moved moments before. The failed Operation Valkyrie triggered brutal reprisals. The Gestapo arrested over 7,000 suspects, of whom 5,000 were executed. Stauffenberg himself was shot in Berlin just hours after the attempt. In 2015, workers near the ruins of the Wolfslair discovered human remains identified as belonging to a concentration camp prisoner, likely one of the forced laborers who helped construct or maintain the site. Today, the moss-covered ruins of the Wolfslair draw nearly 300,000 visitors annually, serving as a chilling reminder of how close history came to changing forever, and how even in the heart of absolute power, resistance found its voice.
The 11th Elbe-Zweite, Germany's forgotten submarine bunker. In the southern port district of Hamburg, at Vulkenhafen on the River Elbe, lies one of the most mysterious remnants of the German Kriegsmarine, the Elbe-II submarine bunker. Constructed in 1941, using more than 50,000 cubic meters of reinforced concrete, the colossal structure was built to shelter Germany's advanced U-boat fleet from Allied air raids. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, several submarines remained sealed inside the bunker. On November 11, 1945, British engineers carried out a controlled demolition, detonating 32 tons of explosives. The blast collapsed the central walls and roof, effectively entombing the submarines beneath tons of rubble, creating a frozen time capsule of Nazi naval engineering. Attempts to destroy the remaining structure decades later proved futile. In 2001, demolition experts used 150 kilograms of dynamite, yet the Elbe-II's concrete shell withstood the blast almost unscathed, a grim testament to the bunker's construction. For years, the buried submarines were forgotten. That changed in 1985 when German researchers Job Malmann-Scholl, Wolfgang Hirschfeld, and Walter Klautz rediscovered the site. Their expedition produced haunting underwater photographs, revealing U-boats preserved in eerie silence, their metal hulls corroded but still intact after 40 years beneath the Elbe's waters. By the 1990s, however, the bunker became a target for illegal scavengers and metal thieves. To prevent looting, German authorities filled the site with gravel and concrete, eventually transforming it into a parking area. Today, beneath the busy streets and warehouses of Hamburg's Freeport, the Elbe-II submarines rest in eternal darkness, sealed witnesses to a lost chapter of naval warfare, a ghostly fleet forever entombed beneath the river that once carried them to war. The 10th, the Ho-8 underground tunnels, Jersey. Among the vast fortifications of the German-occupied Channel Islands, few are as haunting or monumental as the Ho-8 tunnels on the island of Jersey. The name Ho, short for Höhlengangsanlage, or cave-type construction, was reserved exclusively for the network of underground complexes that formed part of Hitler's Atlantic Wall. Construction began in 1941, as the Germans sought to protect their troops from Allied air raids by building a labyrinth of tunnels carved deep into the hillsides. The Ho-8 complex reached depths of 50 meters and stretched over 300 meters underground. It became part of an ambitious engineering program that consumed vast manpower and resources.
By 1944, more than 244,000 cubic meters of rock had been excavated across the Channel Islands, more than for any single section of the Atlantic Wall from Norway to Spain. The tunnels were built primarily by forced laborers, over 5,000 men and women brought from across Europe, Russians, Poles, French, and Spanish Republicans. Working 12-hour shifts with primitive tools in suffocating conditions, they endured unimaginable hardship. Many of the Russian and Ukrainian prisoners perished from exhaustion, disease, and starvation. By 1943, as the threat of Allied invasion grew, the Jersey complex was converted into an evacuation point and underground hospital. When British forces liberated the island in May 1945, they opened the tunnels to the public a year later, in July 1946. In 1961, after passing into private ownership, the complex was transformed into a museum known today as the Jersey War Tunnels. Its permanent exhibition, Captive Island, immerses visitors in life under Nazi occupation. Inside, interactive displays, authentic wartime equipment, and a preserved World War II operating theater reveal the grim realities of that era. One section, called the Unfinished Tunnel, uses holograms to recreate the brutal conditions faced by the laborers, a chilling reminder of the human cost buried beneath the Atlantic Wall.
The 9th, Weingut I, Germany. Deep in the forests near Mulldorf am Inn, Bavaria, lies the haunting remnant of one of the Third Reich's most ambitious and desperate undertakings. Weingut I, a massive underground aircraft factory, conceived in 1944 as Allied bombings decimated German industry. The project, codenamed Weingut I, or Vineyard I, was part of Hitler's final push to safeguard the production of his so-called miracle weapons. Unlike traditional tunnel bunkers, this facility was built using a revolutionary construction method. Engineers first created immense gravel mounds, then poured 3 meters of reinforced concrete over them to form colossal vaulted ceilings. Once the concrete set, the gravel was removed through extraction tunnels, leaving behind vast hollow chambers, enormous concrete cathedrals of war. Around 10,000 workers toiled at the site, 8,500 of them forced laborers from across occupied Europe. Conditions were inhuman. Beating, starvation, and disease were constant companions. Over 3,000 men and women died, their bodies often buried near the construction site. Those too weak to continue were sent to Auschwitz, never to return. Despite this immense sacrifice, Weingut I was never completed. By April 1945, as American forces advanced into Bavaria, only 7 of the planned 12 vaults were finished. The underground factory, meant to produce jet engines for the Messerschmitt Me-262, Germany's revolutionary jet fighter, never became operational. When American troops arrived, they found unfinished machinery, cranes, and construction materials still scattered across the site. In 1947, U.S. Army engineers detonated 6 of the 7 massive arches, leaving only one standing, a solemn memorial to the thousands who perished in its making. Today, that single surviving arch rises silently from the forest floor, its concrete scarred by time, a ghostly monument to the futility of tyranny and the unbearable cost of forced labor. The 8th, Black House d'Eperlex, France. Rising solemnly among the dense forests of northern France, the Black House d'Eperlex stands as a colossal monument of concrete and ambition, one of the largest structures ever built along the Atlantic Wall. Construction began in March 1943 near the town of Saint-Omer with a singular, terrifying purpose: to create the world's first facility capable of assembling, storing, and launching V-2 rockets, Hitler's so-called revenge weapons. The scale of the project was staggering. Its walls were 5 meters thick, its ceilings reached 28 meters high, and over 150,000 cubic meters of concrete were poured into its foundations. The Nazi High Command believed this fortress would change the course of the war, delivering devastating strikes against London just 180 kilometers away. But Allied reconnaissance soon uncovered the secret. What followed was Operation Crossbow, a massive bombing campaign aimed at crippling the V-weapons program before it could strike.
On August 27, 1943, 187 B-17 Flying Fortresses thundered over the French countryside, unleashing 368 tons of bombs onto the site. The assault was devastating. Explosions ripped through the thick concrete shell, collapsing internal chambers and burying equipment under tons of debris. The damage was so severe that the facility could never be completed. Not a single V-2 rocket was ever launched from Aperlex. Today, the Black House d'Aperlex remains a silent witness to both the destructive power of human ambition and the determination of those who sought to stop it. Declared a historical monument of France in 1985, it now serves as a museum, displaying rare components of the V-1 and V-2 rockets, as well as exhibits on the forced laborers who built it under brutal conditions. Each year, over 50,000 visitors walk through its dark, echoing corridors, where bomb scars still mar the northwestern wall, a chilling reminder of the war's reach and the cost of tyranny.
The 7th. Bergkristall B8, Austria. Hidden beneath the quiet Austrian town of Sankt Jürgen an der Gusen, the B8 Bergkristall complex was among the most advanced underground factories of the Third Reich. Constructed in March 1944, this sprawling network of 50,000 square meters of bomb-proof, gas-type tunnels represented Nazi Germany's desperate push to safeguard its cutting-edge jet production from Allied air raids. The facility's mission was extraordinary: to assemble the revolutionary Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. By April 1945, Bergkristall was producing roughly 450 fuselages per month. Intelligence later confirmed that 987 aircraft had passed through its tunnels. The fuselages and wings were built deep underground, then transported under cover of darkness by rail to southern Germany and Bohemia for final assembly. Secrecy at Bergkristall was absolute, but the human cost was horrific. Around 10,000 forced laborers from the nearby Mauthausen-Gusen concentration camp worked in brutal conditions. Many were selected for their technical skills, yet even they survived only a matter of days. The average life expectancy of tunnel workers was 4 months. They toiled 14-hour shifts, suffocating in dust and darkness. Each day, about 100 men perished, victims of exhaustion, disease, or execution. On May 5, 1945, the underground complex was liberated by the U.S. 11th Armored Division. At that moment, the plant was approximately 85% complete and still operational. American forces quickly seized the machinery and documentation before the area later fell under Soviet control. What remained was dismantled or destroyed. In November 1947, key sections of the tunnels were sealed with explosives, burying forever one of the most haunting legacies of Nazi engineering. Today, only fragments remain beneath the earth, silent reminders of a place where technological ambition and human suffering met in the cold stone of Austria's underground. The 6th, Mittelbau-Dora, Germany. Originally established as a subcamp of Buchenwald, Mittelbau-Dora would become one of the lethal underground production sites in Nazi Germany. After the Allied bombing of Peenemünde on August 18, 1943, the Nazis moved their top-secret V-2 rocket program into the tunnels of Konstein Mountain near Nordhausen in Thuringia. What had once been a Wehrmacht underground fuel depot, built in 1936, was transformed into a nightmare of forced labor and death. Inside these cold, airless tunnels, prisoners were forced to expand the complex, turning it into a vast subterranean weapons factory. By autumn 1944, the site was operating at full capacity, housing at least 12,000 inmates. Here, both V-2 ballistic missiles and V-1 flying bombs were produced. The output grew rapidly, from only 3 defective rockets in January 1944 to 400 per month by May and over 600 by February 1945. On September 8, 1944, the first V-2 rocket built in Mittelbau-Dora struck London, marking a grim milestone in the war. For the prisoners, life in Dora was pure torment. For months, they lived directly inside the unstable tunnels, without daylight, fresh air,
or sanitation, crammed into 4-tiered wooden bunks under dripping rock ceilings. Disease, starvation, and exhaustion claimed countless lives. The death rate at Dora was higher than in most other concentration camps. Of the roughly 60,000 prisoners who passed through Middle Baldora, at least 20,000 died. Some inmates, risking everything, engaged in acts of sabotage, deliberately assembling faulty guidance systems or damaging rocket parts. Over 200 prisoners were hanged publicly as examples. Their sacrifice, quiet acts of defiance beneath the earth, remains one of the most haunting testaments to human courage amidst unimaginable horror.
The fifth, Battery Tote, France. Perched on the cliffs of Cape Grisnez along France's northern coast, the Battery Tote stood as one of the most formidable strongholds of Hitler's Atlantic Wall. Named after the German engineer Fritz Todt, who perished in a plane crash, this coastal artillery site was designed to dominate the English Channel and threaten Britain itself. The battery's firepower was nothing short of terrifying. 4 Krupp 380mm naval guns, each housed within colossal reinforced concrete bunkers, capable of launching shells up to 55 kilometers, easily reaching the British shore. The first shot thundered across the Channel on January 20th, 1942, and the battery's formal inauguration followed a month later in the presence of Admirals Dönitz and Raeder. Throughout its operational life, Battery Todt became infamous. Its cannons triggered over 3,000 air raid alarms, claimed 216 civilian lives, and damaged more than 10,000 buildings in Dover. Yet despite its destructive reach, not a single Allied ship was ever confirmed sunk by its fire. The end came in September 1944, during Operation Undergo. At 6:35 a.m. on the 29th, Allied artillery opened fire, followed minutes later by an infantry assault led by Canada's 3rd Infantry Division. Preceded by heavy RAF bombing raids on the 26th and 28th, dropping more than 850 tons of explosives, the attack met only token resistance. By mid-morning, the German garrison surrendered. In 1972, after 3 years of restoration, Castamate No. 1 reopened as the Atlantic Wall Museum, housing thousands of relics from the occupation. Outside stands a massive German K5 railway gun, one of only 2 remaining in the world, capable of firing 240-kilogram shells nearly 65 kilometers. Today, 4 original bunkers still scar the landscape. Castamate No. 3, partially destroyed by an accidental explosion in 1945, remains a silent monument to the fury once unleashed from this coast. The fourth, Bunker V1, Siricourt, France. Hidden in the quiet fields of northern France lies one of the most ambitious and heavily bombed relics of the Nazi war machine, the V1 bunker of Siricourt, known under the codename Wasserweg St. Pol. Built during the height of the German V-weapons program, this immense concrete structure was designed to unleash V1 flying bombs against London. Construction began in September 1943 on a ridge north of the Aden-St. Pol Road. To shield the project from Allied air attacks, German engineers employed a revolutionary technique called verbunkering, building the bunker's massive roof first, then excavating the ground beneath it so that workers could continue construction safely under reinforced cover. Once completed, the site was meant to be linked to the SNCF railway, allowing trains loaded with V1s to roll directly inside for unloading. The bunker's storage capacity was intended to hold 150 missiles, and its launch ramp, aimed squarely at Britain, was ready to begin its deadly work. However, the Allies struck first. Continuous bombing raids pounded the site for months, and by April 1944, when construction was finally abandoned, only the exterior shell had been completed. The internal systems were still unfinished. The site never launched a single missile. After the war, demolition was considered, but the idea was quickly abandoned due to the sheer strength of the structure. Around 80 German POWs were later used to dismantle the launch ramp
and partially bury the complex. Today, the colossal remains of the Siricourt bunker still rise above the French countryside, a ghostly half-finished monument to Hitler's unfulfilled vengeance weapons program. Though it sits on private land and remains closed to the public, its hulking silhouette stands as one of the most impressive V-weapon installations in northern France.
The third, La Coupole, Wizerness, France. Beneath a massive dome of reinforced concrete in northern France lies one of the most astonishing remnants of World War II, La Coupole, a vast underground complex built by Nazi Germany between 1943 and 1944. Located just 5 kilometers from Saint-Omer, this colossal structure was designed to serve as a launch base for V-2 rockets aimed directly at London. Originally known as Construction Project 21, the site featured a monumental dome, 70 meters in diameter and 5 meters thick, an engineering marvel that shielded a labyrinth of tunnels filled with rocket storage chambers, launch systems, and living quarters for personnel. The facility was planned to store up to 500 V-2 missiles and launch dozens of rockets per day toward London and southern England. Underneath the dome, German engineers began excavating a vast underground city. Offices, hospitals, generators, and technical control centers, a self-sufficient fortress carved into the chalk hills. The construction method was ingenious, yet brutal. Build the dome first, then dig the tunnels below it, ensuring protection from relentless Allied bombings. But the Allies soon took notice. By August 1943, aerial reconnaissance had spotted the site at Wizerness, especially once the Germans began laying railway lines leading into the mountain. Over the next months, the Allies launched 16 massive air raids, deploying 811 bombers and dropping more than 4,260 tons of explosives on the area. Despite catastrophic damage, the dome itself survived, an unbreakable shield of steel and stone. When Germany surrendered, La Coupole was left incomplete and abandoned. Today, the site stands reborn as a museum and planetarium, a haunting yet educational memorial to the technological ambition and horror of Hitler's V-weapons program. Since its official opening in May 1997, La Coupole has become a world-renowned historical center, welcoming visitors from across the globe with exhibits presented in 4 languages. The third, La Coupole, Wizerness, France. Beneath a massive dome of reinforced concrete in northern France lies one of the most astonishing remnants of World War II, La Coupole, a vast underground complex built by Nazi Germany between 1943 and 1944. Located just 5 kilometers from Saint-Omer, this colossal structure was designed to serve as a launch base for V-2 rockets aimed directly at London. Originally known as Construction Project 21, the site featured a monumental dome, 70 meters in diameter and 5 meters thick, an engineering marvel that shielded a labyrinth of tunnels filled with rocket storage chambers, launch systems, and living quarters for personnel. The facility was planned to store up to 500 V-2 missiles and launch dozens of rockets per day toward London and southern England. Underneath the dome, German engineers began excavating a vast underground city. Offices, hospitals, generators, and technical control centers, a self-sufficient fortress carved into the chalk hills. The construction method was ingenious, yet brutal. Build the dome first, then dig the tunnels below it, ensuring protection from relentless Allied bombings. But the Allies soon took notice. By August 1943, aerial reconnaissance had spotted the site at Wizerness, especially once the Germans began laying railway lines leading into the mountain. Over the next months, the Allies launched 16 massive air raids, deploying 811 bombers and dropping more than 4,260 tons of explosives on the area. Despite catastrophic damage, the dome itself survived, an unbreakable shield of steel and stone. When Germany surrendered, La Coupole was left incomplete and abandoned. Today, the site stands reborn as a museum and planetarium, a haunting yet educational memorial to the technological ambition and horror of Hitler's V-weapons program. Since its official opening in May 1997, La Coupole has become a world-renowned historical center, welcoming visitors from across the globe with exhibits presented in 4 languages. The second, Project Rise, Poland. Hidden deep beneath the Owl Mountains in southwestern Poland lies one of the most mysterious and ambitious construction projects of the Nazi regime, Project Rise, meaning giant in German. Between 1943 and 1945, Hitler's engineers carved an immense network of underground tunnels and chambers into what was then German territory. To this day, its true purpose remains shrouded in secrecy. The project encompassed 7 separate underground complexes stretching across the Owl Mountains and beneath Xias Castle. In total, the Germans excavated over 9 kilometers of tunnels, creating around 25,000 square meters of subterranean space, with an estimated volume exceeding 100,000 cubic meters. The sheer scale was staggering, but by the time the war ended, only about 11% of the project had been completed before it was abruptly abandoned. Historians still debate what Ries was meant to be. All original documentation was destroyed or lost, leaving behind only fragments of witness accounts and post-war speculation. Some researchers believe it was intended to serve as Hitler's new headquarters, supported by memoirs from key Nazi officials like Albert Speer. Others argue it was designed as a massive underground arms production facility, part of Germany's desperate last effort to continue the war from below ground as Allied bombings intensified. Whatever its true function, Project Rise remains one of the most haunting legacies of the Third Reich, an unfinished labyrinth beneath the mountains, carved at the cost of countless forced laborers' lives. Today, parts of the tunnels are open to the public, offering a chilling glimpse into a world built for a war that never came to pass. The Führer Bunker, Berlin. Beneath the gardens of the Reich Chancellery in Berlin lay one of the most infamous underground complexes in history, the Führer Bunker, Adolf Hitler's final command post and the stage for the dying days of the Third Reich. Unlike the other wartime bunkers designed for military coordination, this one became a tomb of a collapsing empire. Hitler retreated to the bunker on January 16, 1945, as Soviet forces drew ever closer to Berlin. From that moment, he rarely surfaced above ground. His final public appearance came on April 20th, his 56th birthday, when he awarded medals to members of the Hitler Youth in the bombed-out gardens above. As the Red Army encircled the city, paranoia consumed him. Upon learning that Heinrich Himmler was attempting to negotiate surrender with the Western Allies, Hitler's trust in his inner circle completely disintegrated. On the night of April 29th, in the cramped map room of the bunker, he married Eva Braun in a brief, somber ceremony before dictating his final will and political testament to his secretary, Traudl Junge. The following day, April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun took their own lives. Following his instructions, their bodies were carried to the garden above, doused with gasoline, and set ablaze as artillery thundered over Berlin. The complex itself had been built in 2 stages, an upper Vorbunker and a deeper Führer Bunker, situated about 8.5 meters below ground, with 4-meter-thick walls and a 3-meter-thick ceiling. Inside were around 30 small rooms, including conference areas, bedrooms, and storage spaces. Conditions were harsh. Constant dampness, the hum of pumping machines, and the smell of diesel generators filled the stale air. Water was drawn from a nearby well, and the atmosphere grew increasingly claustrophobic as the end approached. The Führer Bunker remains one of history's most haunting places, a symbol of the final downfall of Nazi Germany, buried under the streets of modern Berlin.